I watched it yesterday, and I'm still processing it, so I probably shouldn't give you a final verdict at all. But I liked it. I liked it, but I completely understand, 110%, if you're a fan of the original Saw series, if you didn't like it. The reason being, it's not, I mean, as you would expect, it's not a typical Saw movie. Welcome to Blockbuster Review. If you don't know what that is, it is where I play a single game of Tetris Marathon, up to 150 lines, and try to review a film before I reach 150 lines, or before the blocks reach the top. Spoilers are at line 50, and here we go. Spiral, from the Book of Saw, is a reboot, reimagining, Chris Rock production thing that takes place in the universe of Saw, but is not a direct sequel. It's an interesting thing to explain. So basically, Chris Rock, he is the son of a very, very well-known police officer in, I think this is LA? Pretty sure it's LA. They don't ever expressly say LA, but I think it is LA, or Los Angeles, if you will. And his father was, you know, a hero cop, well-known in the department, and his son is well-known for being a rat. Turns out, Chris Rock, his character Zeke, witnessed a cop doing some straight-up corruption shit, murdering a witness who, basically his only crime was saying, yes, I did see a police officer commit a murder. So then that police officer was like, well, you're about to see another one, your own. Chris Rock, you know, spilled the beans on that corrupt cop. He is now ostracized in the cop. That's a big thing among cops, especially if you've ever seen the television show NYPD Blue. And I'm not bringing it up because I have a podcast called NYPD Blue Balls where we go over every single episode. The point being, the film has a big theme about who you can trust, and in police culture, who is a rat and who deserves help because they're not with us, they're against us. And it has a lot to do with police corruption and police kind of turning into their own gang where they do as they please, but they have the law on their side. And then we have the introduction of a Jigsaw copycat, which I fucking love. That at the beginning of this film, they go, yeah, it's a Jigsaw copycat. It's not Jigsaw, it's a Jigsaw copycat. The one thing I fucking hated about the Jigsaw movie that was a reboot, soft reboot, / I don't even know what you'd fucking call it, was that they made the goddamn mistake of trying to make people believe that fucker was still alive. Even though Saw, now it's time to rant, even though Saw is in a universe where horrific, horrible, fantastically horrible things happen, it's still based in a little bit of reality. The things that happen in Saw, you could build. It would just take a master's in engineering and basically zero concern for your fellow man. That's how you make the traps in Saw actually happen. So we find out, okay, there's this Jigsaw copycat, and they are only going after cops. So it becomes the standard Saw mystery where you're trying to figure out what are all the pieces coming together, like what is the purpose of this killer doing this. And it all seems to center around Zeke. I mean, he's the main character. They start using clues that only he would know from his past. Other cops are wondering, is it his father? Because there's a clue that leads them to a place they used to go to when Zeke and his father were kids. You find out that Zeke and his father do have a strained relationship, and his father's played by the bad motherfucker himself, Samuel L. Jackson. And through the course of the movie, you know, you find out, okay, basically every cop in this department is corrupt in some way. It almost becomes kind of a joke that every single time... Oh, by the way, Chris Rock has this new partner. And he's showing the partner the ropes, and basically every time the partner's like, well, what's his deal? Chris Rock essentially goes, he's a corrupt piece of shit. And it's like, everybody's corrupt, everybody's against me. But you would feel that way too, because they have a flashback where literally Chris Rock gets shot because nobody comes to give him backup because they don't give a fuck about him. I haven't really described if I like this movie or not. I do. I watched it yesterday, and I'm still processing it, so I probably shouldn't give you a final verdict at all. But I liked it. I liked it, but I completely understand. 110%. If you're a fan of the original Saw series, if you didn't like it. The reason being, it's not, I mean, as you would expect, it's not a typical Saw movie. The first Saw was really about those characters inside the room. It was focusing on what their deal was. And then it became about John Kramer and his quote-unquote disciples. This one, it starts up from the very top. This is not John Kramer. John Kramer is dead. He's just another copycat. I think they kind of... I'm not saying they threw shade at the Jigsaw one, but fuck, I would. That movie sucked ass. By saying, oh, it's just another one of those shitty copycats. But the mystery unfolds very well. I did call... Not the ending, but I did call who was the killer in my brain. Because there was a moment where it's like, I think it's this. And I turned out to be right. But I think the traps are very effective if you're into traps. I do think that there is a lot of time to get to them. Whereas Saw kind of started this thing of like, you're either in the trap the whole time and we're figuring out the backstory, or we have little traps throughout the entire thing. This movie kind of doesn't do that. It really has more time for Chris Rock's character to breathe. It really has more character development of this police force and what's going on in it and why it's working the way it is, and the interdepartmental relations between these characters. But I still dug it. You know, it's not typical Saw fare, but I dug it. Now I will say, its message, or, I mean, its central theme, whatever you want to call it, about the police, like, I'm not saying it's crowbarred over you, like, I'm not saying they're beating you in the head with it, but at the very end, when it all comes together, it's like, okay, this was a very pointed statement about the policing, about police forces, about the way they treat their citizens, about the way they conduct themselves, and I'm not mad about it. I just know that for sure, and I don't want to judge you for this, but I know for sure there are plenty of people who would watch this movie who may like Saw, who may be quote-unquote Blue Lives Matter folks, who would watch this and go, okay, yeah, all right, Like, you know, they just have that reaction, like, okay, I get it, we're all monsters, we're all pieces of shit, which is not the point of the movie. In fact, there is a character in it who is a cop who is the protagonist. Zeke, played by Chris Rock, who did the right thing and got fucking punished for it. Anyway, I almost messed up the name. Spiral from the Book of Saw. I dug it. I completely understand why you wouldn't dig it if you like Saw. That's where we're at. I liked it. I wouldn't be surprised if you did.